So in this video we are going to continue working on creating 2D games, but we are going to focus on tile-based games. And the idea for tile-based games that instead of having a free tile, we are going to store all the maps into a 2D matrix of tiles. The process of generating the tiles are pretty much the same. We have here a sprite sheet. We need to split these into individual tiles, and then we are going to select specific tiles to start painting on this tile map. The whole process of creating a game level now is going to set a grid, and that grid is going to be the design for our level. Let's see how this is done. Okay, as an exercise to create tile-based games, the first thing you need to do is to create a grid. A grid can be composed of multiple tile maps. Each tile map is going to represent a layer of the grid. The whole idea is that we can have a background layer, and on top of that we can add some details, and on top of that we can add all the tiles that will be responding to physics. We can have a layer in front of the player, and so on. So you can have as many tile maps as you want, as long as you remember to define each tile map in a different sorting layer or a different order in the specific layer. We are good to create as many as you want. So for me to create a grid, you go here in the hierarchy, 2D, tile map, and rectangular. That's going to be the tile type we are going to be using for this map. In the future we are focusing on the other ones. I'm planning to show you two examples, one top-down game and one side view game. Both of them use the same technique to create the tiles. It's just a matter of how we are going to interpret the data later when you are programming the interactivity of the game. So for the time being, let's focus first on the top-down game. Okay, so I have here my grid. I need to provide a name for my grid. My first layer is going to be called background. And for me to start painting tiles in this background, I need to have a tile palette. So for me to create a tile palette, I need to have individual tiles. I have here the sprite sheet that I'm planning to use in this exercise, but at this point they are still a single image. We need to split them into individuals. You guys already know how to do that. So sprite mode, I will change to multiple. The pixels per unit, I already set mine from 100 to 16. I'll change the filter mode to point no filter and compression to none and hit apply. So now I have everything sorted. I can start splitting in the sprite editor, and you go to slice. Instead of automatic, you go for cell size. I know my cell size is 16 by 16. You see the red grid here showing that we already split perfectly. When the sprite sheet was designed correctly by the artist, everything works fine when you are trying to split the tile map. Notice that even objects that are composed of multiple tiles, they still can be split in 16 by 16. I don't need to create larger tiles for this, because I can paint a group of tiles at once when designing my game. After that, I hit slice and then apply, just to confirm all tiles, and just wait until Unity do its magic. And after that, I can come back to Unity, and now I have a whole bunch. It has more than 1,000 tiles in this sprite sheet, so it's very complex sprite sheet. But I still need to make this sprite sheet into a tile palette. I created a folder beforehand called, where's my folder? Right there, tile palettes. And I'm going to save all my palettes into this folder just to keep my project organized. For me to create a tile palette, I need to bring the tile palette editor to its screen. So I go to Window, I go to 2D, and then we have tile palette. I don't want this to be floating. I will dock mine next to the inspector. And to create a new palette is pretty simple. Unity is already saying here to create a new palette in the drop down menu above. So you just come here, create new palette. You choose a name for your palette. In my case, I am going to use the same name of the file. So overworld. All the other parameters are okay. This is a rectangle grid. So hit create. Unity is going to ask a folder for me to save the palette. I can go back to my assets, tile palette, and select folder. And there you go, we just created a new tile palette, and that tile palette needs tiles. For me to create tiles, I just select the sprite sheet. Now that sprite sheet is already split into individual tiles. I just drag and drop onto my tile palette I just created. Again, I need to select a folder to save the individual tiles. I'm going to save the same tiles palette folder, and I'll be back as soon as everything is imported. And here I'm back. Now we have here our first tile palette. If you want to create a new palette, you can do that selecting here the drop down menu and create new palette, and just repeat the process we just went through. And for this tile palette, note that every single tile is selectable. We can actually choose what is going to be the brush for us to start painting, or if you want to use multiple tiles, you can draw a box and select multiple tiles at once for you to paint over your 3D view. Here on the top you have the buttons you are going to use to edit this tile palette. The first one is to select tiles, the second one is to move tiles around, the third one, shortcut, is B, for you to start painting with active brush. You can see here that I select the house, I can start painting with the house. The next one is to paint an entire box, so the shortcut is U. Then we have the eyedropper. You can choose a specific tile, to pick a specific tile on the screen. Then we have the eraser. If you want to delete a tile on the 3D map, you just use the erase brush or shortcut T. And finally the flood fill. We can paint an area that was open in my tile palette with the G key. So for this example, what I'm going to do, I'm going to choose one tile, like this first grass tile, and choose a box. And I can start. First, you can choose individual brush. I could start painting individual tiles by clicking the environment, or I can hold the key and start drawing in the 3D area. Also works. But let's say you want to create an entire rectangular area. A much faster way is to select the box. So if you remember, the shortcut is U, and you just start drawing a box over the entire grid, and you are going to paint the box here. And basically you repeat the process now for every new tile you want to draw. Remember, we need to choose first what is going to be the active tile map. Right now you have just one, so it's easy. But let's keep adding more details to this level. At this point, this first level here, the background, is going to contain only the information that's going to be the background for my game. You don't care to add many details or any physics involved. So it's going to be a very simple background level, but I want something a little bit more interesting than just a green screen. So let's see what we can do next. Maybe we could add some roads. I think I have another dirt tile, and I start painting streets or roads on my screen. And there you go, we have some simple background scene. We can add as many details, it's up to you to draw anything you like. And now we can start creating more detail. Let me do some of this. We can start creating more details by adding other tile maps. To add more details, basically going to add a second tile map. So select the grid, right click, go to 2D object, tile map, rectangular, and we have a second tile map. Let's call this one details. And you start drawing tiles on top of the other one. Remember, when you are trying to draw into the second tile map, you need to change here the active tile map from background to details. And most likely what you want to do is to add tiles that have a transparent background, so those tiles are combined together. Well, I'm not going to bother to adding too much details, but at least some examples so you guys can see this in place. Okay, so I didn't do too much of a job, but just for you guys to understand the process. So basically this second layer I call details contains a transparent background and only contains the small details. I can even hide the other layer so you guys can see what happens. So this is what I add for the second layer, some flowers, and to give it a little bit more depth. And notice that as soon as I bring the background back, the details disappeared. That's because I didn't yet focus on what order I want this to be rendered. You can always create your own layer for that. Probably a good idea to create a layer for your tile map. And what I'm going to do in this case is just select the details and going to change order to 1. And there you go. We have all the second layer being always rendered on top of the first one. And the process is going to be repeated for as many layers as you need in your game. So let me add a third layer now. Right click to the object, Tilemaps rectangular. Let's call this one collisions. So in the collisions layer you add all the tiles you want to be an obstacle for your object within the game environment. Like for instance, I can draw an entire rectangle around the house and paint an entire house here. Remember, before you start painting, don't forget to change again the active tile map to collisions. So this way you can draw on top of the other layers. So one house here. And once more, don't forget to change the collisions order in the layer. So the other ones were 0, and 1. So this one is going to be layer 2. This way it's going to be on top of the other. Yeah, and probably a good idea is to create a layer that goes in front of the player, but I will circle back that in due time. Now that you create a tile-based game using the top-down view, how about we use the same technique, creating a grid, a 2D grid, but instead of a top-down, let's use a side-scrolling or a platformer. So the process is pretty much the same, so we're going to speed up a lot. You can use the same technique for either one. Okay, so we need tiles for that. I download this set of tiles from OpenGameArt, and I was checking the documentation from the artist, and he created a tile that has 70 pixels per unity. So the first thing you need to change, selecting all the tiles. They are already split as individual tiles, and you want to change this to 70. Again, change the filter point to no filter, compression to none, and pretty much it, and hit apply. Let's create a new palette, and I download from opengameart.org, and the author is called Kenny. I'm going to use the name of the author for my new palette. Save in the same folder. And then add all these tiles to this new palette. Same process as before. And we have all the tiles in here. Let's create a grid. It's going to be a rectangular grid, just like the other one. Let's call this platform. And we can start drawing using these tiles. We can also add more layers if you want to do. We can go draw later, longer if you want. This is just an example. You can see here in game how this looks like as your final layer. We can add more details as if you want to do that. For the time being, I'm not going to do a great job. I'm just showing an example. Let me create a second layer. Okay, so basically you are going to follow the same process. You want to have a layer for your physics responsive objects and a layer for non-responsive, as many layers actually as you want. Don't forget that when you add a new layer, you want to change the ordering layer to 1 so they show in front of the other layers. You might want to have details that are show in front of the player and other details that are going to show behind the player. So maybe can have a second layer of details, one for background, one for foreground.